Well, hey everyone, welcome to this awesome conversation today. We have an amazing guest. Her name is Susanne Madsen, and she is the author of How to Do the Inner Work, brand new book that is really, really fantastic. It's made a huge impact on my life, and I'm excited to share about it and to have Susanne share about it today as well. So, Susanne, tell us a little bit about why you decided to write this book, because you have such an interesting story of going from executive coaching to doing this kind of work.
Yeah, exactly. So, because I'm a coach, I have a real passion for helping people to overcome their challenges. And it breaks my heart when I come across the people who say that they lack self-esteem or they just end up working themselves to death. It really, really is hard when I see so many people have these challenges. So what I really want, obviously, with this book and with my work in general is to help people, give people some tools that are tried and tested. I'm not saying there's a magic bullet because there's not a magic pill that we can all take. But doing this kind of work that the book presents helps people to dig deeper and to find the solutions that can help them. And I will tell you one thing: we all have issues, right? Um, Varying degrees. Some people feel
Mhm.
overwhelmed in their work or life. Some people have low self-esteem. I see that a lot. Some people feel they constantly have to prove themselves, or they just generally have a sense of unhappiness, and they feel perhaps also anxiety some of the time. And I must say, I'm not a therapist, but I've coached for 15 years, and I just see a lot of the same patterns come up. And I think,
Mhm.
Tom, the mistake that many of us make is that we think we can find the answer by fixing something external to us. And that's what's happened to me in my own life as well. I felt overwhelmed. I thought I could control everything around me. And I see people trying to do that. We become overly controlling.
Mhm.
But actually, it doesn't help. It may help in the short term. So if I feel overwhelmed with work because I have too much work on, sure, it can help me in the short term to ask my boss to reduce my workload. But I think everyone listening will agree that it doesn't fix the problem permanently. Something else happens, I get a new boss, I get a new job. I'll overwork myself again if I haven't figured out what those underlying patterns are. So that's really why I wrote this book. I think out of all the coaching I've done, I really have this toolbox that can help people dig deeper. And it's especially a book for people who know that by changing external circumstances, they're not going to fix things. So they're ready perhaps to look deeper and to look inwards and do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why this book resonated so much with me is because I had a very similar pattern of overworking. I used to work 80, 100 hours a week when I was starting my business because I was so, at the time, I would have told you I was really happy. I was so excited. I was so inspired. And that was true. And also, I still had this pattern, like you were saying, underlying all that of why I was being so driven and why it was causing me to feel so stressed and so anxious all the time. And that's a really common pattern, right? That we get caught up in what we're trying to accomplish in life and what we're trying to do in life. And we think, oh, well, once I make $1 million, then I'll be happy. Once I get married, then I'll be happy. Once I have kids, then I'll be happy. And it's like you get to the next goal and the next goal and the next goal. And then you realize I'm still struggling with whatever I've been struggling with, whether it's anxiety or stress or fear or so on. So how do we address that? Is there like some final solution to these problems, or is it a process or a journey?
Well, it's definitely a process or a journey. And, some people have 6 coaching sessions with me. They read the book in parallel, then they do some work, they come back and do a bit more. Mastering our thoughts and our emotions and getting to our patterns can be a long journey. And I've also seen it happen like this. People get aha moments where all of a sudden, like a switch is flicked. And that actually happened for myself in my own work. I had my aha moment many years ago when I was coached for the first time. I think it goes back almost 18 years now. And I realized that, oh my God, if I challenge my thoughts, if I think about this differently, the whole situation changes. And it sounds so simple, but actually it's true because our thoughts dictate how we see the world. Our thoughts dictate how we feel about a situation. And if we can help people through some of these tools to be curious about a situation, to be curious about themselves and how they relate to the situation, they'll begin to see themselves differently. A metaphor I often use, I say to people who run this journey with me, imagine you walk down the street and there's a hole in front of you and you fall into the hole. It hurts. You get scratches. It takes you a long time to climb out. Okay. Next day, you walk down the same street, you fall into the same hole. And it keeps happening, but you get better at climbing out. So you change your strategies and your techniques and you get better. Now, one day you walk down the street and you're like, aha, I see the hole, I see the hole. Oh, you may still fall in, but eventually you learn to walk around it. And that's this journey we're talking about. And the real breakthrough, of course, is the day when you don't have to walk down that street anymore. You choose a completely different street. So it is a journey.
Yeah, so how do you deal, like how do you pick a different street? 'Cause I don't when you say pick a different street, do you mean you pick a different job, or do you mean you pick a different, like what you were saying, like your thoughts and perspectives on the situation?
Yeah, so let's take the example of somebody who's overworked, let's say. So I show up for work, I feel overwhelmed, and there can be different reasons for that. So there's different patterns that I see underlying this. Some people really want to be in control. So they can't delegate, they want to be in all the details, right? That's one pattern I see. Another pattern is that people really want to please. They value the relationship so much, they can't say no. They're worried about setting boundaries because I might hurt the other person, or I might ask them to do work that I'm not willing to do myself, so I might fall out with them. And then there are people who really lack confidence. They feel they're not good enough, and they're trying to overcompensate by proving themselves or by taking on more work. These are different patterns, but the result is all overwhelm and overwork. So we can help them with some strategies of climbing out of this hole quicker. We can help them with time management strategies. We can help them set boundaries. We can help them say no. But I think the day they choose a different street is the day that I choose what I feel differently about myself. I no longer need to hide behind my work. I'm okay the way I am. I'm good enough the way I am. And I work because I choose to. I work because I can make a difference. I work because I enjoy it. I don't work because I'm afraid something will happen if I don't do all this hard work.
Gotcha. So it's really about what we talk about in the book is like healing trauma, right? It's like healing this part of ourselves that is like, I'm working so hard. First of all, you have to have the realization, right? Like you have to understand the reason I'm working so hard is because I'm afraid that I'm not going to have enough money, or that I'm not good enough, or whatever that core belief is, right? So you start with that awareness, and then how do you shift that awareness? Or I mean, shift that belief.
Yeah, so it is a process of, as you say, first we got to see the pattern. First we got to understand that there is something here that isn't working for me. I see the same thing over and over again. If it's a new relationship, a new job, I see the same things. I overwork myself in this case. Then we have to be curious and understand, why do I behave the way we do? Because every situation is serving us. Even if we think it's not serving us, it's causing me stress. Yes, but of course, there's a reason why you have adopted this behavior. It gives you some validation, it gives you some esteem, whatever it is, gives you some control. And then I think we have to be really honest about what our true needs are. What is it that I truly need? What is it that I truly want? What is a better future for myself? What's a better scenario? We've got to have a compelling alternative. And then we can go back to this situation, these types of situations that tend to trick me up. What am I thinking? What am I saying to myself? And really understanding, really beginning to notice, okay, what am I saying to myself? I'm saying, oh, I'm a failure if I don't do this, or I'm going to be fired if I don't work hard. I had someone yesterday I coached. Exactly this scenario. I see it very often. And she works 12-hour days, so much now she has a back issue. She's actually signed off work. And I said to her, what's the worst that can happen? What do you say to yourself in your head? She says, oh, I'm saying that if I say no to this extra project, that I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be fired. Right? Well, is that a realistic scenario? It could happen, but is that really likely to happen just because you say no to another assignment? So then I can ask her, is that belief true? Is it true? Well, it could happen, but it's probably not very likely that they'll fire me just because I speak up. Okay, and that's the way we begin to change a belief. It won't happen. Sometimes it happens like this in a split second. Then this person goes back to work and they're like, oh yeah. I don't want to sign off. It's 10 p.m. I'm working hard. What am I saying to myself? And slowly they begin to challenge their thoughts. And that's what it means to change a belief. I'm challenging my thoughts. It's not comfortable initially because I'm doing something differently. And a big part of me is going to say, no, you're a failure if you don't get this job done. You're gonna get a red note in the book if you don't get your project done tonight. So it's a slow process of challenging our thoughts. And as I said, understanding how they have served us in the past and how that thought is no longer serving us.
Gotcha. So the inner work here is like you said, getting curious. You mentioned it several times how important it is to get curious about our thoughts, about how we talk to ourselves. And that gives us clues, right, to how we're perceiving the situation. Because if I say, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job if I don't say no to this, or if I do say no to this project, that means I must believe that like I deserve to work, or like I have to work this much in order to survive, or I have to sacrifice my own needs in favor of the company or my boss or whatever it is, right? Like it gives you the clues as to what that really underlying belief is.
Exactly. Yeah. And many people, Tom, they don't, before they start this journey, they're not so aware that we can change our thoughts because most of us spend most of our time on autopilot. We do roughly the same things every day. We think roughly the same thoughts every day. Of course, that's an exaggeration, but we go on autopilot, we do this, we do that, we have our coffee, we do this, we have this meeting, we respond in this way. We don't stop and take a step back and ask ourselves, oh, what was my reason for doing this? Or what did I think in that moment when I became so defensive, for instance? Raising
Yeah,
our
so that's where the
awareness.
curiosity comes from, and it's like that self-inquiry of kind of
Yes.
analyzing your day or analyzing a situation that might have been stressful and trying to figure out almost the way I look at it is like almost like I try to be like a third party observer, like looking back, okay, Tom's having this meeting. Like, why is Tom so anxious in this moment? Why is Tom so upset about this situation, right? That has helped me a lot, having that kind of third party perspective to look down the situation to see what my patterns might be.
Yeah, and you can practice that because once you've done it, you know that it will work. So I always say that once you've gained a level of awareness, you can't unlearn your awareness. You can't undo what you're already aware of. So your example there with this third person perspective, or let me try to be the fly in the wall and look at myself from the outside. What am I seeing
Mm.
without judgment? Because we love to have this stick that beats ourselves up and say, oh yeah, I'm useless. I know I have low self-esteem. And we go down that route of just being even more hard on ourselves, and that does not help. So that's where the curiosity comes in. Curiosity means that we're not judging ourselves. We're just asking, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why you said that. How could you have said it differently? And where does it come from? Who is it serving?
Yeah. So we all have that inner critic, right? Like the part that's hard on ourselves. I don't know of anyone who's really claimed to have solved that issue for good, right? Like unless maybe they're some enlightened being or something, right? We're always going to have possibly parts of ourselves that come up with those kind of thoughts, or we worry about worst case scenarios. We have anxiety, like that's a normal emotion to have, right? Um, but you mentioned that we can actually change our thoughts, and so maybe you can give some context on how to do that. But first, on like, is that just trying to control ourselves? Because I know, like, you can get really neurotic, like, oh no, don't think negative thoughts, don't think negative thoughts, right? Like, sometimes that can make ourselves, we can make ourselves worse if we're over analyzing things too much. So how do we tread that line between changing our thoughts while also accepting ourselves the way we are?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And I want to bring in the concept of self-compassion here, because self-compassion means that we are being less hard on ourselves and we accepting ourselves where we are. Because if I'm too critical, then I think I should be doing better. I ought to be doing better. And it's very counterintuitive. We think that, oh, I don't want to be too self-compassionate. I don't want to be too nice to myself because then I'm going to let myself go. Then I'm just going to accept myself. But actually the opposite is true. Think about a kid or a good friend that you have. If you show compassion towards that friend, let's say they want to lose weight, you're not going to go and say, yeah, you're too fat. I know, shame on you. I mean, no one would say that. That's probably sometimes what people say to themselves. So we would say, oh, I know it's challenging where you are. You know, you are where you are. Don't blame yourself. From now on, you can make different decisions. So this self-compassion is about accepting where we're at. It doesn't mean that we don't want to change. It just means that we're taking the tension out of the situation. We're taking that extra negative load out of the situation. And then I think in terms of what you're saying, when is it too much? When we can monitor everything, you know. But if I have a negative thought, and a lot of our thoughts are negative, fine, have self-compassion. Don't make yourself wrong for it. Just notice it. This is a lot of mindfulness. Just notice it. I'm being critical of myself. Don't make yourself wrong for being critical. Just notice it. That's a curiosity. Because if I can just notice I'm being critical, oh my God, today I'm very critical of myself. That already is helping because I'm aware. And when I'm aware, I can change it. We definitely don't want people to become neurotic and I should be doing this because that's the critic again. Then we're putting ourselves down.
Right. So how do you approach that then? How do you approach that with yourself, Susanne, when you're having stressful thoughts that come up, or you're having negative thoughts that come up, or you're being really hard on yourself because you didn't meet your expectations? How do you approach that situation?
So I have become quite good at allowing that. So I'm allowing whatever is happening. I'm not saying I'm perfect at that, but I will say, okay, so today I'm having a tough day, or I'm trying to see if I can think of a situation. If I feel tired, could even be that, right? It's like, okay, I'm having a tired day today. It's okay. Tomorrow what can help in this moment? So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question exactly, but it is that same thing again. It's self-compassion. And just what's the next step I can take? What's the next step I can take to maybe shift this a little bit? But I'm not making myself wrong for where I am, because then it's a downward spiral.
Yeah. Well, I love that. What I'm noticing about how you're talking to yourself is like you start with self-compassion and acceptance, like, oh, it's okay. I'm tired. That's totally okay. And then you kind
Yeah.
of get curious, like, well, what would help? What do I need? What am I wanting now? What could I do to help myself feel better, take better care of myself? And I think that's a much more empowering question than why am I so worthless and why am I so tired and what's wrong with me? And oh my gosh, maybe I'm having some kind of disease and I need to go to the doctor, right? Like you're not spiraling in anxiety. You're shifting your attention and focus to what are my needs in this moment? How can I take care of myself?
Yeah, and I'll give you another analogy that may be helpful to the listener and those who are watching. So if we imagine there's a line, we can either be above the line or we can be below the line. If I'm above the line, I have this curious mindset. I'm open. I am curious. I could even be in flow. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling could be energetic, but my mindset is open. I can innovate in that state and I can collaborate. And there's no noise, right? When I'm below the line, I'm somehow there are some negative emotions playing up. Could be that I'm really suspicious of somebody, or I feel anxious about something. I feel overly stressed about something. And I think the idea of doing the inner work is trying to get something from being below the line to above the line. And if I'm having a bad day because I feel below the line, I just feel rubbish today, or I had my application wasn't accepted for something, I feel angry. Okay, I'm below the line. I'm below the line. If I accept that I'm below the line, if I show self-compassion, maybe even give myself a hug, it's much more likely that that act in itself will bring me above the line. And from above the line, with an expansive mindset, I can say, okay, how am I going to address this? Because if I take action from a place of being below the line, from a place of being activated and my emotional brain, my limbic system going all over the place, I'm going to be reactive. My action is not going to be a real constructive action. It's just going to be a knee-jerk reaction. So I hope that image that metaphor is useful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? And I think probably a lot of us have either gotten that advice before or given that advice before, like, don't make decisions when you're really emotional. Don't make decisions when you're really angry or when you're really upset. Like sleep on it or find a way to calm down first and then think it through clearly before you make a decision. about like whether to leave your job or a relationship or something major like that, right? Or even, sending an email to your boss or a coworker, right? Like just when we make decisions out of big emotions, usually those aren't the best decisions for us in the long term. Um, so how do you calm yourself down? And it's one of my favorite parts of the book, actually. There's a lot of different strategies you give to find calm and find peace and find clarity. What are some of your favorites?
So the breath is always available to us, and that's why I've dedicated a whole chapter in the book to the breath, actually, because if we're at work, we can go to the restroom, we can just take a few minutes out. That it's been proven, this is all scientifically proven, that if we change our breath, deepen it, slow it down, and if we breathe out twice as long as we breathe in, we're actually signaling to our nervous system, all is well, there's no need to panic. And that's because when we are in a stressful state, of course, our breathing pattern is different because we're about to run from a tiger. But if we are in a state where we can breathe slowly and focus on our out breath, literally, the signals are going back up to the brain saying, there's no danger, relax. So the breath, and there are many different breath work techniques in the book, I think is such an instant go-to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite techniques too. Can you run us through maybe a minute or two of breath work, like one of your favorite techniques, so that people can really feel it? Because I think, I had heard about breath work before, and sometimes when you hear about something, it's like, this sounds, yeah, it sounds great. There's science, like, meditation, it sounds great. There's science. But until you really experience it and like feel it in your body and the difference that it makes, it's hard to believe sometimes how big of a difference that can make. So can you give us an experience to taste that?
Yeah, sure. So I would say, just for those who are listening or watching, just kind of, yeah, make yourself comfortable and begin to notice and begin to breathe in, and maybe people can take their hands and hold their hands around the lower part of their ribs. And as they slowly begin to breathe in, just we can notice how the ribs expand. So the lower parts of the ribs, not the chest, the abdomen and the lower parts of the ribs should begin to expand as we are breathing in. And if people have a phone where they can see the number of seconds that pass, I would say breathe into perhaps 5 seconds, and then slowly breathe out. Could be through the mouth or through the nose, longer than you breathed in. So if you can count to 10, it's good to breathe out on 10 and breathe in on 5. So we'll just do that together. So breathe in through your nose to the count of 5. Slow, deep breath. And then make a long, slow exhale to the count of 10. Maybe we'll do that once more. A slow, deep inhale through the nose to the count of 5. And a slow, deep exhale to the count of 10. Do you feel the effects of that?
Yeah. Way more
Very
relaxed now.
short, very short.
Yeah.
And the other thing that happens when we do breath work is that we take our mind and our busy mind away from this is wrong and that is wrong to, oh, let me count. So some people would say we're giving our monkey mind something to do. So we stop ruminating and focus on something as simple as breathing and where we feel the breath in our body, perhaps.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's one thing I noticed. The more breath work I do, I know it's working when my mind, I just don't have those same intrusive thoughts, right? I'm not worried about the future. I'm not worried about what's going to happen and how this is going to go or anything like that. And the other thing is that I feel this like deep sense of calm and energy in my body where I'm just like, oh yeah, everything's okay. Right. Whereas when I'm more activated, maybe more anxious, more, trying to get things done, trying to control the situation, I feel much more, yeah, just much more anxious, much more kind of worried about how things are going to go or how I'm doing what I'm doing. And after the breath work, it's like, oh no, I can just sit here and enjoy the the view out the window. I can enjoy this conversation with you. I can just listen to what you're saying and not be thinking about how I'm going to respond.
Yeah, we can change our state in a split second.
Hmm.
But it's our whole physiology, because our physiology is so closely linked to how we think and our emotions. We are one big system that's connected, and the breath is a way to hack into that system, if you like.
Yeah, and it's powerful. And you know, another thing I noticed doing breath work more and more, and especially being inspired by this book, is that that feeling would last for longer and longer. Right at first, it might be, oh, like I feel better for 5 minutes, and then it was 20 minutes and an hour, and then sometimes days, where I just find myself in a much calmer, better state. How has that experience been for you and for your clients? Is that a common pattern that you notice?
Um, it is actually, and I think it's great that you bring it up and that you share your own experience, because that's a testimony to how powerful it is. One other breathwork technique that has worked very well for my clients, let's say somebody is not particularly stressed, because this breath that I just shared now really calms it down. But let's say somebody is just, they want to stay alert and they just want to feel good and they want to optimize. Then there's another breathwork technique that I've shared with many clients, which is more like a circular breath. So we breathe into 5 and breathe out to 5. And it's a slow, deep breath. But it actually serves for somebody to, the number of breath we take per minute would be between 5 and 6. And that's in stark contrast to maybe 15 breaths per minute that most people would take. So we're slowing down our breath, but we do equal lengths in breath and out breath. And that means that we're not slowing down our nervous system. We're not ramping it up or revving it up either. We are in equilibrium. And it's a great breath for harmonizing our heart and our mind. And that technique I've had also very great feedback on from people. So some people call it coherence breathing. You know, we love to put names and labels on different things, but in the book I refer to it as coherent breathing.
Gotcha. So 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. And you're saying that helps you be more balanced, more kind of neutral in your emotions and your thinking?
It helps you because it optimizes the signals that go from the heart to the brain. It helps you to really think clearly, to be above the line. I think it helps you to really be above the line, as we talked about before, and to be in that alert yet calm state. So you are alert and you're also calm at the same time. So you're not trying to fall asleep. You want to stay online.
Gotcha. So is that kind of your go-to breath when you're working or trying to get something done or trying to think through an issue?
If I focus, okay, I won't do it. But if I feel a little off center, then yes, I will do that one. And it's I have a little app as well. It has a bell, because if I'm out walking, I can do it. So it has a bell that every time there's 5 seconds have passed, it will do a little gong, gong, and I know when to change from in breath to out breath, and my physiology changes. Yeah, it's powerful, as you said.
Yeah. Oh, so just for people listening, you mentioned this is a circular breathing technique. Can you explain what that means for someone who might not have
Oh,
heard that before?
I think I could draw it on the breath. So it's out breath to 5 seconds and in breath to 5 seconds, and you breathe out to 5 seconds and you breathe in to 5 seconds. So in that sense, it becomes circular. Some people talk about box breathing, right? You have 4 breath in, hold it, breathe out to 4, count to 4, then you hold it again. So, but that's all it means, really.
Gotcha. So you're not pausing between in breath or out breath. You're just breathing in, and then when you let that go and you breathe out, and you keep repeating that pattern.
Correct. Yeah, you said that better than I did. That's right.
Yeah, that's really cool. So another thing that I love about your exercise in the book is this. You talk about like finding a place to think, and you mentioned scheduling a lot of time to reflect, to journal, to kind of think back about our emotions and our experiences and our situations. And what I've noticed, like especially in the past decade, like I'm much more addicted to my phone now. everyone I've ever talked to, like it seems like everyone we spend so much time on our phone when maybe we don't want to as much. We spend a lot of time watching TikTok or social media or YouTube videos or texting back and forth or whatever it is. And it can be hard to get out of that pattern, right? And almost everyone I've talked to this has the same kind of issue. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to take that time out to reflect and to create intentional space. And I'm curious how that helps you and your clients to, yes, stay above the line more and to live a more fulfilling life as you talk about.
Mm. So I coach a lot of managers, leaders, executives, and because we can do this in our work lives and in our private lives, it's equally powerful. But in a work context, when many of them train with me, they go through leadership training and they learn because we put in time for reflection. We have a journal, we journal together, write down what you're noticing, what you're observing, and they experience how powerful it is to step outside of themselves and reflect. Like you said a moment ago, right? You take that third person perspective and you look onto yourself. And so once people have had an experience of how powerful it is, the question is, how can you integrate this into your own life? And sometimes it's a question of, listen, we all very busy people, of scheduling half an hour every 2 weeks in the diary. And then they'll find, yeah, it was in the diary, but I ignored it. Okay, well, how can you create a commitment with somebody else? How can you create a reflection time with another person who is on a similar journey to you? Because that also works. The other person can ask you, okay, so what's been important to you this last period? What would you like more of going forward? Or what have you noticed? What have you not noticed? Whatever these insightful questions are. But they can be kind of a mirror to each other. But ideally, we get in the habit of creating this reflection time. And it doesn't have to be a big block weekly. It could also be some people, if they walk their dog. I know some people I coach, they're like, okay, I've started walking the dog on my own because it becomes my reflection time. For some people, it's when they do sports. For some people, it's having more like a meditation exercise, a meditation practice, or some kind of more spiritual practice. It doesn't really matter, but I always ask the person because they need to decide as their life, what will work for you? Start small. Because if we have this big goal of sitting down for an hour every Friday afternoon or half a day every Friday afternoon, it's not going to happen. So start small. And when people see the benefits of it, they begin to do it more and more. And they miss it when it's not happening.
Yeah. I've noticed that over and over again that you miss it when it's not happening, right? In my own life and people I've worked with as well. Like once you get a really good thing going, it's like you don't want to lose it. You don't want to lose staying up as line as you mentioned, feeling calm, feeling relaxed, feeling confident in your ability to address challenges at work or in your personal life.
Yeah, and in my own life as well, because I used to be also running on autopilot. This is now over 15 years since I qualified as a coach, and I wasn't all that aware. It was just about getting things done. And I don't think I had a lot of reflection time back then. But now, because it's been so many years of me working with this, I notice when I feel off balance. And I may have a day or two when I'm running around, I'm not feeling right. Yes, but I need to get a lot done. And then, okay, stop. Go out. I always go for a walk. There's some nice trees around here. But instead of going for a walk, then thinking about what I need to get done, I'm like, oh, I say hi to the trees and I say hi to the birds. And then I get into that space where I can sit down and reflect. Okay, what is important right now? Or what's going to be important for the next 2 weeks? Or just reflecting on how I am, or what am I missing? Could be any kind of reflection. Very important.
Yeah. One of my favorite reflective exercises in your book is, you talk about identifying your needs, right? Like getting really clear on what is it that you need. Can you explain, like, what is a need? Like, how do you define that?
Yeah, so there are some, we all have physiological needs, we all have psychological needs. And I don't think it matters so much how we define a need. But when I sit with people, and let's go back to this example of, let's say, people who overwork themselves for, they have some underlying patterns they need to address. I ask them, and I ask them that in the book as well. what do you need more of in your life? People always know the answer. They always know the answer. Because it's I need time, or I need space, or but you're right, there is a specific exercise in the book where we go through what are your fundamental needs. And understanding our fundamental needs can help us understand why we behave the way we do. If I have a big relational need, I have a big need for connection in my life, that's often what I will prioritize. Or if I'm not prioritizing it, I'm going to feel off kilter. So once I can identify my basic needs, I can then make an assessment to see, am I living according to my fundamental needs? So, and I call them fundamental needs because they are. Some needs we all have. We all have the need to feel safe. We all have the need for a certain amount of safety and certainty in our lives. We all have this relational need. We all have a need to know that we matter, so there are some fundamental needs, but we're all different. So the hierarchy of those needs might differ a little bit from person to person. And then we also have values. So values are a little bit of a higher abstraction. So you could say, well, family is important to me. So my need is relational, but it expresses itself as a value that family is important to me, for instance. And so we can go through and identify all these needs and values that we have. I have a need for freedom. It expresses itself through my value of traveling or whatever it is. And so in this exercise, people can go through and identify that, and then they can be brutally honest and say, okay, am I living according to those needs? And I want to also take the opportunity to say that life isn't just about fulfilling our needs. Okay, it's not about throwing our toys out of the pram if we don't get a perfect life where everything plays to my need and my job is perfect and it's not about that, because that's unrealistic and we don't want to set people up for failure. I think this is about being honest with what's important to me and working towards that. Rome wasn't built in a day, so don't expect that everything will change within a month. But now you have a compass and you have a direction that you can work towards, and be compassionate if not everything happens the way you want it to. Just, acceptance is a big part of the journey too.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say I've identified a need, you mentioned connections and relationships. I feel that I'm feeling lonely. I feel the need for more close connections, close relationships. And it sounds like what you're saying is like once you identify what that need is, it gives you a direction, it gives you a goal, it gives you something to aim for. And obviously you can't just identify that in one moment and solve it in the next. It takes time, right? But in my experience too, like that is one of the biggest that is the inner work, and that's why it's so powerful, is because once you have that direction to move towards, you can go from feeling stuck and overwhelmed and anxious to feeling inspired, and you're moving forward in a way that feels good. Even if you haven't achieved that goal yet, you know what you're moving towards and can feel good to make that kind of progress.
Yes, and I think if I may bring in the word purpose, because we all are purpose maximizers. We all want purpose. So if I know that I'm moving in the right direction, because I may feel lonely today, but I've taken steps and I know I want a family one day, so I've taken steps to move in that direction, that also makes me feel that I am on the path of fulfilling my purpose, even if I'm not there yet. So I think the direction is very important. If I'm making gradual progress, then it's important. So look at the trajectory. I often ask my coaching clients this. So if you look back at the last 5 years, have let's say somebody is feeling overwhelmed. Have your levels of overwhelm gone up or down, or are they stable or whatever? So it's the direction that we're traveling in. If we are generally moving towards connection, if that's what we want, good, keep going, one step at a time, one small extra action each day, that is sustainable.
Absolutely. And it feels good to make that kind of progress. Like it feels like you said purposeful, but to me it feels very meaningful. It's like, oh yeah, like I do realize, like I look how much progress I've made in the past month, in the past year, in the past 5 years. And having that kind of mindset and that kind of self-talk and that kind of perspective, it feels so meaningful. It feels so much more engaging when I'm living my life that way, and it doesn't feel so hopeless and helpless and like I'm stuck.
Yeah. And I think that's the purpose of coaching, and it's a big purpose of the book, is to help people, guide them towards a place where they feel that there is more meaning and purpose in their lives. Sometimes we need to set our eyes on what's really important, and at other times we need to remove blockages that are in our way. And most of the time, it's both of those that need to happen. I need to move towards what I want, and I need to remove what's holding me back, some of these blockages or limiting beliefs, and together, these two forces together will mean hopefully that I can take one step at a time and move towards something that's more fulfilling for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've only got a few minutes left. I want to talk about boundaries. You mentioned that in the book and how important that is. And it relates to what we're talking about because sometimes some of the biggest blockages or barriers in life can be other people, or maybe not necessarily other people, but our perception of them or our perception of relationship and so on. So let's talk about boundaries. Like, how do we get what we want? Because so much of what we want in life comes from other people, right? Like, no one is successful on their own. The idea of like some self-made successful person like doesn't exist. Like, we all need to work together and to collaborate and to have connections and relationships together. And you mentioned in the book like how hard it is for some people to deal with boundaries and to work with boundaries. What advice would you give to someone struggling in that arena to get more out of their life and their relationships with other people?
So I often liken it to a tank full of fuel. So if a person feels energetic, then the tank will be full, and if they're running on empty, then obviously this is not a good sign. The amount of boundaries I need to set will depend on, I think, how much fuel I've got in my tank. Because if I've got full fuel and I'm happy and I'm contributing and I'm giving and I'm doing voluntary activities here and I'm working overtime, but I feel really good because that is my purpose, well, fine, good. Is there a problem? But the way that people can see that there is a problem is if they feel drained. Yeah, I feel drained. I've been running on empty for too long. I don't have enough to look after my own needs, don't have enough time or energy to look after my own needs. So one person I was coaching last week has elderly parents, and she's driving 2 hours each Sunday to look after them. And that's good, but she's doing it every single Sunday. And she says to me, I'm doing it because I have, I don't value myself. I don't feel I have enough value. Said to, what would you be doing differently if you had more value? What would you be doing differently if you had more esteem for yourself? He said, I wouldn't go and see my parents so much. I would have different boundaries. So again, each person knows, we know intuitively when we need to set boundaries. It's not about being rigid and never going to see the parents, of course. It's about saying, how can I balance their needs with my needs? It's not about giving everything to others and there's nothing left for me. Then how can I function? How can I even be of service to others if I'm completely drained myself? You know what they always say on board a plane, put the oxygen mask on yourself before you attempt to help others. And that's what we're talking about here. So I think, Tom, is really about each individual looking at where do I need to set helpful boundaries so that I don't feel so drained in energy. And it could just be one change. It could be I leave work at 6 p.m. 3 days a week. That could be a boundary I set. I stop working on weekends. And that, believe me, for some people is a massive step, and it takes them a little while to get there. I coach people who work around the clock. So, yeah. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, yes. And I love the questions that you're asking your clients and the people that you work with, right? Like, it's so powerful, I think, to reframe the situation and to be able to ask the kind of question that gets me thinking about how I might do things differently, but not in a way that's shaming, right? It's not like, what's wrong with you? Why do you keep doing this thing you don't want to do? Like, that's not the kind of question that's going to produce that kind of response, right? It's a question of, if you did really value yourself, how would you do it differently? What would you do differently? And that's why I think it's so powerful to have a coach like you who can ask those amazing questions, but also to have, the exercises in books like this and these conversations so that I can take that question and ask it to myself. I don't need to call someone up. And it's great to have people you can call and talk to. That's fantastic. But I think being able to learn these skills and to have these examples and to be able to repeat them to myself is so helpful because sometimes you just need to, like you said, shift your perspective, shift your mindset, and ask a better question.
Yes, and that is exactly the purpose of this book, because you didn't say it explicitly, but there are 24 exercises in here. And all the questions that I ask people, all these introspective questions are in here. And that's why it's got work in the title, how to do the inner work, because it's not just a book that I read through and I feel good afterwards. It's actually a book, hopefully I will feel good afterwards, but where it takes me on that journey of answering these types of questions for myself. The questions are already in the book. So I need to take the time to reflect and to ask these questions so that I gain new insights. That's the second best to working with a coach real time, I think.
Yeah, definitely. This book, the exercises alone, it's so worth it. And I think, like I've been to $1,000+ workshops, really deep personal development working like 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. And these exercises are on par, even better than those. And there's so many of them, like more than you could do in a workshop like that, right? So it's really, really powerful. Um, and I think it's the kind of book that, like you said, it's not like you're just gonna read it in an afternoon and be like, oh, now I feel great about myself. I'm thinking positive thoughts all the time, right? It's like, yeah, I read this and I have this new understanding, I have new insights into why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And then now it's time to do the work, right? Now it's time to really reflect. Now it's time to make a plan. And to figure out what it is, what am I needing? What would be more fulfilling for me? And to ask those questions. And I love what you said earlier in this interview, Susanne, and what you mentioned in the book is that we have the answers inside. Like everyone knows if you ask them what do they need more of in their life, they know, like we know, right? Um, and I think sometimes we just need to know that we can do it, or that someone is cheering for us, or that we have support. And so I want to, appreciate you and acknowledge you for the work that you're doing because you are giving so many people that support and encouragement that they need to have the confidence to take action on that. Because if someone's feeling stuck, there's a reason they're feeling stuck. They're not crazy. There's nothing wrong with them. Sometimes we just need some support. We need a helping hand. We need someone like you, a mentor, a coach, an author to say, hey, what about doing things differently? What if you really were that valuable? What if you really could take that next step? And that's such an inspiring message to share. And so I really want to thank you for the work that you're doing.
Oh, you said that really beautifully. I'll take that on board. Thank you. You are right.
Absolutely.
It is meaningful, and just for me to see the shift that people make, it's worth all the effort. Absolutely. Yeah, it makes my day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Susanne. The book, How to Do the Inner Work, it's available everywhere. And Susanne, for folks who want to just find out more about you, your coaching, the work that you do, maybe see more interviews, videos, content that you have, where would they go?
Yeah, so Susanne Madsen, SUSANNEMADSEN.com is my website, and I'm the same. I have the same name on YouTube, the same handle. I think we call it on YouTube, and but my website I think is the best place. My videos are up there as well. Yeah,
Awesome.
links to
Thank
the
you so
book.
much, Susanne, for being here and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Tom.